The breaking point, the massive space station Nexus Prime, hung in the void like a glittering jewel, its crystalline spires catching the light of 3 distant suns. Inside its grand conference hall, representatives from 47 different species had gathered for the annual Galactic Trade Summit. The air hummed with the sound of universal translators working overtime, converting the clicks, whistles, and growls of alien languages into something resembling common understanding. Captain Alina Torres sat quietly in the human delegation's assigned corner, watching the proceedings with tired eyes. 15 years. That's how long humanity had been attending these summits, and for 15 years, they had been treated like unwelcome guests at their own funeral. The irony wasn't lost on her that humans, who had invented faster-than-light travel independently, were now relegated to the furthest seats from the central podium. The Zephyrian Consortium controlled the meeting, as they controlled most things. In this galaxy, their insectoid representatives, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed like polished obsidian, dominated the center of the hall. Their compound eyes reflected the holographic displays showing trade routes, profit margins, and resource allocations. None of those routes included human space. The motion to expand the Kepler trade corridor passes without objection, announced. High Merchant Vexti, the Zephyrian leader. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he marked. Another decision that would further isolate human colonies from galactic commerce. Torres stood slowly, her hand resting on the small device attached to her belt. I object. The hall fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the background hum of the station's life support seemed to pause. 46 alien species turned to stare at the lone human who dared interrupt their carefully orchestrated proceedings. High Merchant Vexti's head swiveled toward her with mechanical precision. The human delegation was not recognized to speak. Your species lacks sufficient trade volume to warrant input on major corridor decisions. Torres walked forward, her boots echoing in the sudden quiet. She had done this walk so many times before, approaching the center of the hall with humanity's concerns, only to be dismissed, ignored, or actively blocked. But today felt different. Today, the weight of recent events pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Sufficient trade. Volume, she repeated, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Let me tell you about trade volume, High Merchant. 3 days ago, human cargo vessels carrying medical supplies to the colony at Kepler 4 for Tubi were destroyed by consortium patrol ships. 500 civilians died when those medicines failed to arrive on time. Vexti's mandibles spread in what might have been amusement. Regrettable friendly fire incident. War games in that sector. Your ships were not properly identified. War games. Torres stopped 10 meters from the central podium, close enough that every camera drone in the hall could capture her expression. In a neutral shipping lane, during a medical emergency, with cargo manifests filed 3 weeks in advance. The Althari delegation, crystalline beings who communicated through color changes, flickered nervous purples and yellows. They had been humanity's closest allies in these halls, though their support rarely extended beyond moral encouragement. Even they seemed uncomfortable with the direction this conversation was taking. The incident is closed, Vexti declared, his voice taking on the mechanical tone that indicated final judgment. Compensation has been calculated according to standard protocols. The human delegation will receive notification of settlement terms within standard business cycles. Torres reached for the device on her belt, her fingers finding the small activation switch. High Merchant, Do you know what humans call patience? The question seemed to catch the Zephyrian off guard. His compound eyes reflected confusion as they focused on her. Irrelevant cultural concepts do not concern this assembly. We call it preparation. Torres pressed the switch. Throughout the hall, every holographic display suddenly changed. Trade route maps vanished, replaced by something that made several delegates recoil in shock. The screens now showed detailed schematics of Zephyrian military installations, patrol routes, fleet compositions, and defensive capabilities. Information that should have been classified at the highest levels of consortium security was now displayed. For every species to see, Vextai's entire body went rigid. This is an act of espionage. Security breach protocols initiated. No, Torres said quietly. This is an act of revelation. For 15 years, you've pushed us to the edges of galactic society. You've blockaded our trade routes, attacked our ships, and dismissed our concerns. You thought we were weak because we asked for peace instead of demanding it. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from dozens of species began talking at once, their translators struggling to keep up with the sudden flood of communication. The Krathari delegation, warrior caste reptilians who respected strength above all else, were leaning forward in their seats with newfound interest. The ethereal void singers had stopped their haunting harmonies entirely, something that hadn't happened in recorded galactic history. You want to know how we obtained this information? Torres continued, her voice cutting through the noise. We didn't steal it. We didn't hack your systems. We didn't need to. We've been watching you for 15 years, learning your patterns, understanding your weaknesses, and preparing for the day when patience would no longer be enough. High Merchant Vextai activated his emergency communication array, sending rapid bursts of data to consortium command ships throughout the galaxy. This aggression will not stand. The consortium has treaties, alliances, mutual defense pacts. And we have something better, Torres replied. She gestured to the screens around them, which now showed new images. Human colonies that the consortium had written off as struggling backwater settlements were revealed to be thriving industrial centers. Mining operations that appeared barely profitable were actually extracting rare materials in quantities that dwarfed consortium estimates. Research stations labeled as agricultural experiments were clearly advanced technology development facilities. We have truth. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. The Zephyrians had built their power on information, control, on knowing more about their neighbors than their neighbors knew about them. The idea that humans had been quietly building their own intelligence network while appearing completely harmless was beyond their comprehension. Impossible, Vextai chittered, his composure finally cracking. Our surveillance systems monitor all human activities. Our economic models account for every human resource extraction operation. Our military assessments catalog every human defensive installation. Torres smiled for the first time since entering the hall. Your surveillance systems see what we wanted them to see. Your economic models account for what we allowed you to discover. Your military assessments catalog the decoys we built specifically for your cataloging. She walked closer to the central podium, and now every camera in the hall was focused on her face when she spoke again. Her words were meant for every species in the galaxy. We are not the weak newcomers you believed us to be. We are not the desperate supplicants begging for scraps from your table. We are humanity. And we have been patient for 15 years because we hoped you would choose to be reasonable. The screens changed again, showing something that made even the most battle-hardened delegates suck in shocked breaths. Ships, Massive ships, sleek and dark, emerging from what appeared to be empty space near the edges of human territory. They moved with purpose and precision, their hulls reflecting no light as they arranged themselves in perfect formations. "You destroyed our medical convoy 3 days ago," Torres said, her voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. "You killed 500 of our people because you thought we wouldn't respond. You thought we couldn't respond." Vexti was frantically trying to establish communication with consortium fleet commanders. But his emergency channels were returning, only static. The realization was beginning to dawn on him that perhaps humanity's preparation had been more thorough than anyone could have imagined. "This is your last warning," Torres announced, her words echoing through the suddenly silent chamber. "For 15 years, we have endured your contempt, your attacks, and your dismissal. We have tried diplomacy, negotiation, and patience, but our patience has limits." She turned to face the assembled delegates, making eye contact with as many species representatives as possible. "We are not asking for your respect anymore. We are not requesting equal treatment in your trade agreements. We are not begging for a seat at your table." The device on her belt chimed softly, and Torres glanced down at it with satisfaction. The signal she had been waiting for had finally arrived. "We are informing you that the game has changed. The rules you wrote to keep us marginalized are no longer in effect. The agreements you crafted to limit our growth are hereby considered void." Torres began walking toward the exit, her footsteps the only sound in the vast chamber. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at the frozen tableau of alien delegates. "We tried to be your partners. You chose to make us your problem. Now you get to discover the difference." The revelation, the consortium war fleet materialized from hyperspace like an iron storm. 200 ships, strong and bristling with enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. High Admiral Kethfer, Supreme Commander of Zephyrian military forces, stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human outer defense stations appeared on his screens like scattered pebbles, small and insignificant against the overwhelming force he commanded. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "Target the nearest human outpost. Full bombardment. I want the other species to see what happens when someone challenges consortium authority." 3 days had passed since the human Torres had humiliated them at the trade summit. 3 days of emergency meetings, frantic communications, and hurried military preparations. The consortium had ruled the galaxy for over a century through careful control of information and economic pressure. They had never needed to resort to direct military action against a species foolish enough to challenge them. But humans apparently required a more forceful education. The lead destroyers accelerated toward their targets, energy weapons charging, and missile bays opening. Admiral Kethfer activated the broad-spectrum communication array, ensuring that every major species in the galaxy would witness humanity's punishment. "This is High Admiral Kethfer of the Zephyrian Consortium," he announced, his translated words reaching billions of ears across dozens of worlds. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the Consortium maintains order through strength. The human species has violated the peace through espionage and threats. They will now face the consequences of their aggression." The first salvo of plasma bolts streaked toward the human defense station, brilliant streams of destructive energy that could punch through any known shielding system. Admiral Kethfer watched with professional interest as the weapons approached their target, already calculating the time needed to reduce the station to drifting debris. The plasma bolts passed, harmlessly through empty space. Kethfer stared at his tactical display in confusion. The human station had been there moments before, clearly visible on both visual and sensor arrays. Now the screens showed nothing but vacuum and distant stars. His weapons officers were frantically recalibrating their targeting systems, convinced that some equipment malfunction had caused the miss. "Sir," his sensor operator reported, compound eyes reflecting the blue glow of his instruments, "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Unknown configurations. Show me." The main display shifted to a wide-angle view of the surrounding space, and Admiral Kethfer felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service. Fear, the empty void around his fleet, was suddenly alive with contacts. Hundreds of them, appearing from nowhere like ghosts materializing in daylight. The human ships were unlike anything in the consortium databases. They moved without visible engines, turned without attitude thrusters, and somehow managed to avoid detection until they chose to reveal themselves. Worse, they were positioning themselves with tactical precision that suggested they had been watching the consortium fleet since before it arrived. "Impossible," Kethfer whispered. "No species has cloaking technology that advanced." His communication officer looked up from her station, mandibles chattering with nervous energy. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Human origin. It's being broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was calm, measured, and utterly confident. It belonged to a human female, though Admiral Kethfer couldn't tell if it was the same one who had spoken at the trade summit. "Hi, Admiral Kethfer. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You came here to make a demonstration. We appreciate the opportunity." Kethfer activated his response array. "You are outnumbered 5-1, human. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Chen replied, and Kethfer could hear something like amusement in her voice. "You're not outnumbered. You're surrounded, and you're not fighting the Earth Defense Force. You're fighting an idea that your species never understood." The tactical display updated again, and now Kethfer could see the true scope of his situation. The human ships weren't just numerous, they were everywhere. Above, below, behind. Ahead, his fleet sat in the center of a three-dimensional net that had been woven around them without triggering a single proximity alarm. What idea is that? He found himself asking, though every instinct told him to order immediate attack. "Patience," Chen answered. "For 15 years, we watched you build your fleets. We studied your tactics, analyzed your weapon systems, and learned your weaknesses. We didn't do this because we were planning to attack you. We did it because we knew that eventually you would attack us." One of Kethfer's destroyers, apparently deciding that the best defense was offense, opened fire on the nearest human vessel. The plasma bolts struck their target dead center, a direct hit that should have vaporized the enemy ship instantly. Instead, the human vessel absorbed the impact without visible damage and continued on its course, as if nothing had happened. "Adaptive shielding," Chen explained conversationally. "We developed it by studying the energy signatures of consortium weapons. Your guns are quite powerful, Admiral, but they're also quite predictable." The human ship that had been fired upon suddenly accelerated, moving faster than anything in Kethfer's experience. It closed the distance to the consortium destroyer in seconds, not bothering to return fire. Instead, it simply flew past the larger vessel, and the destroyer's engines immediately went dark. "Localized electromagnetic pulse," Chen continued, "completely harmless to biological systems, but very effective against standard consortium technology. Your ship is disabled, not destroyed. The crew is unharmed. More consortium vessels opened fire, desperation overriding tactical doctrine. Every shot either missed entirely or had no visible effect on the human ships. Meanwhile, more destroyers and cruisers found their systems mysteriously failing as human vessels swept past them like silent predators. "This is impossible," Admiral Kethva broadcast on open channels. "No species advances this rapidly. No technology develops this efficiently." "You're right," Chen agreed. "No single species could accomplish what we've accomplished. But we weren't a single species, were we? We were the species you pushed to the edges of galactic society. We were the ones you forced to work with the Althari crystal growers and the Void's Ingor, harmonic specialists and the Krathari weaponsmiths. You thought you were isolating us, but you were actually forcing us to innovate." The realization hit Kethva like a physical blow. The consortium's policy of human isolation hadn't created weakness. It had created cooperation. By refusing to trade with Earth directly, they had pushed humanity to form relationships with smaller, more specialized species. Each of those relationships had contributed knowledge, technology, and capabilities that the consortium had never bothered to monitor. 15 years of collaboration, Chen's voice continued. Althari computational crystals merged with human artificial intelligence. Harmonic technologies integrated with human quantum mechanics. Krathari metallurgy enhanced with human engineering. You gave us the greatest gift possible, Admiral. You gave us time and motivation. The last of the consortium's active ships went dark as human vessels completed their sweep of the formation. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy had been neutralized without a single casualty on either side. It was a demonstration of technological superiority so complete that it redefined what every species thought they knew about galactic power balance. "Your crews are unharmed," Chen announced. "Your ships can be repaired. You can return to consortium space with a message for your leadership. The age of human patience is over." Admiral Kethva found his voice. "What do you want? What we've always wanted: equality, respect, the right to trade freely and live peacefully. The difference is that now we're not asking for these things. We're stating the new reality." Across the galaxy, representatives of dozens of species watched the confrontation through emergency communication channels. The footage was being analyzed, discussed, and shared faster than any government could control. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only developed technology beyond anything in the known galaxy, but they had done it in secret while appearing to be helpless victims. "The Zephyrian Consortium will remember this," Kethva warned, though his words lacked conviction. "I'm sure they will," Chen replied. "And when they do, I hope they remember something else. We could have destroyed your fleet. We could have eliminated your species' military power entirely. We chose not to because we are not conquerors. We are not interested in ruling the galaxy or subjugating other species." The human ships began to fade from sensors again, disappearing as mysteriously as they had appeared. Within minutes, the consortium fleet found itself alone in space, their vessels powerless but intact. "We are interested in justice," Chun's final transmission crackled through the comm systems. "For 15 years, you tested our patience. Today, you discovered our strength. The choice of what happens next is yours to make." Admiral Kethva sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed his once mighty fleet drifting helplessly through space. Around him, his officers worked frantically to restore basic systems and establish communication with Consortium Command. But the Admiral's mind was focused on a single, terrifying realization. Humanity had been holding back. For 15 years, they had endured insults, attacks, and systematic oppression while secretly developing capabilities that made them the most powerful species in the galaxy. They had the strength to conquer every known world, the technology to destroy any opposition, and the strategic patience to orchestrate a revelation that would reshape galactic politics forever. And they had chosen to use that power to ask for exactly what they had been asking for all along: a fair chance to participate in galactic civilization. The message was clear to every species monitoring the situation. Humanity had tried peace first. They had offered cooperation, sought compromise, and endured injustice in the hope that reason would eventually prevail. But when pushed beyond their breaking point, they had demonstrated why patience should never be mistaken for weakness. As rescue ships began arriving to restore power to the consortium fleet, Admiral Kethver composed his report to High Command. It would be the most difficult message he had ever sent, but also the most important. The galaxy had just learned that there was a new power among the stars, one that preferred partnership to domination but was fully prepared to enforce its own survival. The age of human patience was indeed over. The age of human equality had begun.